Hi, I'm Abby Shamray, and I'm standing outside the Michael White Adobe. It sits on the campus of San Marino High School in California, where I am a junior. It used to play a vital role in the community, but it has long since been forgotten, and now sits as merely an artifact of an era long gone. There's no denying the importance it has in not only the history of San Marino, but all of California, and the significance it can continue to have if only we save it and restore to it the respect it deserves. The Native American Tongva tribe originally populated the San Gabriel Valley, where the Michael White Adobe is located. Franciscan missionaries opened the mission San Gabriel Archangel in 1771, and that was the beginning of non-Native American infiltration of the land. California became part of Mexico almost 50 years later when Mexico revolted against the Spaniards. Michael White arrived in California while it was still under Mexican rule and changed his name to Miguel Blanco in order to better assimilate.
I, Michael Clearing Bud White, generally known in California under the name Miguel Blanco, was born February 10, 1801 in Kent, England, and brought up there until I was 13 years old. My father and his father were named James White and were farmers. My mother's maiden name was Elizabeth McTed. At 13, I was apprenticed to the master of the ship Perseverance of London, whose name was William Mott. I was with him 2 years and 9 months in the whaling business and was left ashore at San Jose del Cabo in Lower California. That was in 1817, in my 16th year.
In 1845, he was granted a small rancho of about 78 acres called San Isidro, and he began keeping a traditional Southern Californian ranch, complete with vineyards and cattle. Starting in 1870, he began deeding away his property, mostly to his children and their families. But by 1899, it was almost completely in the hands of Isaac Newton Van Nuys. Michael White adapted quickly to his new homeland, changing his name to Miguel Maria Blanco, and learning Spanish, although he tried to avoid becoming involved with the politics of the inhabitants. Opportunities to leave his mark on history seemed to fall into his lap. Miguel Blanco became a pirate and a smuggler, built 2 of California's first boats, was promoted to first lieutenant on King Kamehameha II of Hawaii's army, participated in the Battle of Santa Barbara, became a Mexican citizen, and married Maria del Rosario Guillen, daughter of Eulalia Perez de Guillen Marine.
After being in San Diego 8 years, we came to the mission of San Gabriel, where my husband had been serving in the Guard. In 1814, in the 1st of October, my daughter, Maria del Rosario, was born, the one who is the wife of Miguel White and whose home I am now living. There I was with my 5 daughters. The priest wanted to help me out because I was a widow, burdened with a family. Employment was provided for me at the mission. I spent about a year teaching the Indians and the missionaries, who were very pleased with me. They offered me the keys to the mission. That was in 1821. They put me in charge of everything having to do with clothing, cooking, cleaning, and handling out rations to the laborers and the troops. I attended to the soap house, the wine pressers, and the olive oil crushers. I handled the distribution of leather and everything having to do with saddle making, belts, and shoes. At the mission, wine, oil, bricks, adobe blocks, chocolate, sweets, and lemonade were made. I served in this capacity for about 12 to 14 years until after the death of Father Sanchez.
Doña Eulalia kept the mission in tip-top shape, but life at the Adobe was a bit more chaotic. The wife of a local judge, Benjamin Hayes, paid a visit to the Adobe and recounted her experience in a letter to her sister.
Los Angeles, March 13th, 1852. My dear sister, we have made a visit in the country, went out Wednesday and returned Saturday. The gentleman we visited has been here 22 years. He lives only a mile and a half from the Mission San Gabriel. this mission is almost in ruins. Mr. White has a Californian wife. She appears to be a fine woman, but they know nothing about the comforts of life. Their house was cold and dirty. The chickens and dogs stay in it as much as the children. An American lady, a near neighbor, came and invited us home with her. We went and stayed until after tea, quite a treat. They were living in a log, or rather a pole house, with a good large fireplace and a cheerful fire. I felt quite at home, imagined myself in a log cabin in Missouri or Illinois. We returned to Mr. White's by moonlight, half a mile, a beautiful walk. Mr. White has much the best house, but at Mr. Taylor's everything was clean and comfortable. We locked up the house when we left, and an Indian remained in care of the garden.
Housekeeping at the Adobe might not have been all that easy, considering that it's made from earth and has earthen floors. Adobe blocks are made from local soil mixed with straw and sometimes manure, then formed into rectangular molds before they are left to be dried in the sun. The blocks are then stacked like modern-day bricks to shape the walls. The next step was to plaster them smooth inside and out. Bill Ellinger, preservation architect, talks about some of the Adobe's key features.
And the Adobe blocks were made typically from the soil that was there where the structure was being built, and the clay soil was mixed with sand and water and straw to help bind it together and to help it dry more quickly and uniformly. And that mixture was then put into a wooden form in the shape of the Adobe block. Most common shape was 12 inches wide approximately and 24 inches long, and about 4 inches deep. And so there's some places here at the Michael White Adobe where there are deliberately open areas in the wall where we can see the original Adobe block construction.
On October 29th, 1951, before construction began on the new high school, local school board member Cale Carver led an effort to restore Michael White's Adobe. He wrote, "All too many of our landmarks are being razed in the path of progress." He envisioned the Adobe to be an integral part of the new school campus and saw it as essential to the students' educations.
The Michael White Adobe represents a rare opportunity in preserving and educating a public that is open to all sorts of unknowns. You have students who pass by it every day, multiple times a day. You have parents who walk by the Adobe going to their sports facilities, and you have families going there during the weekend. The effects and the sheer presence of the building are truly unknown. For example, Roy Tolles is our structural engineer that we have retained, who is a San Marino High School graduate. He is a Stanford graduate. He is an Adobe specialist and has volunteered his time on this project for 2 years. I'm sure he could tell you that that building has benefited who he is and what he's become. And so the fact that this building exists on that site represents lots of opportunities for things that we cannot predict in the future.
Okay, my name is Roy Tolles. I'm a structural engineer and I specialize in earthen buildings, in particular historic Adobe buildings. But I also deal with Adobe buildings in developing countries where they're used primarily for housing. You know, the coolest thing about the Michael White Adobe building, which is true for pretty much all the Adobe buildings, is the mud itself. It's just so simple. It came out of the ground. It was made by hand. Basically, the energy that people use to form that with their hands is still in this building. It was done directly, and it's just a building that is of the earth and by the earth. So from my side, I just think the mud itself, the bricks themselves, are the greatest part of any building. And I particularly like this building because it's so simple. It's not a big sprawling building. It's 3 simple rooms. And it hasn't really been changed all that much. They added some plaster, they added some brick on the floor, but the walls and everything else is pretty much intact from when it was first built. This was probably the first Adobe building I was ever in, but I didn't know it was an Adobe building. Back in 1971, the cheerleaders, the cheer squad used to use this building for storing materials, making signs, and that sort of thing. And I remember being in this building, but I didn't realize it was Adobe until 20 years later.
Well, a preservation project can be a pretty painstaking process because one of the most important things is to understand what is worth preserving and saving and really making sure that that is protected and preserved and renewed. So it's really about giving new life and longevity to something that is old and historical and precious. I think our collective goals are to make this part of the life of San Marino High School. That, well, we basically want it to be a piece of living history, so that it's both protected but also a vital part of the place.
The Michael White Adobe is not just the oldest structure, residential structure in the city of San Marino, but it is, through Michael White, a direct link to the mission years in the development of the Los Angeles region through the San Gabriel mission. It's just a unique opportunity to have that, to be able to restore it such that we can showcase it for all the residents of San Marino.
Michael White and Don Eulalia had such an impact on early California history, we must make sure it isn't forgotten. The restoration effort in the 50s was a start to keeping alive the spirit of the Adobe, but making sure it's around for generations is a continuing effort. Let's work together to make the Adobe an important part of the student school experience in San Marino. Thank you.